In college, I pretended to be poor for 4 years, only to be dumped in the end by a scumbag named John. He found himself a rich and beautiful woman and claimed that Miss Emma could save him 10 years of hard work, whereas I couldn't.
Apart from being pretty, you're just a decorative vase with no other value.
That really made me laugh out of anger. Back in the day, I was the belle of my department, admired by many. When I agreed to date John, everyone around was shocked. He was so ordinary. Average looks, average abilities, average grades, and just 178 centimeters tall. No one understood why I chose him. I liked John for his personality. He was honest, sincere, and straightforward. However, since our senior year internship, he had become irritable, often losing his temper for no reason, and even taking it out on me once or twice. I understood it was because of work pressure, but it still made me uncomfortable, even though he always apologized sincerely afterward. But this couldn't go on forever, so I asked my dad, Michael, to get him a director position. Unexpectedly, before I could give him this special gift, he broke up with me. He didn't know that while being with a rich and beautiful woman could save him 10 years of hard work, being with me could save him a lifetime of effort.
What are you thinking about?
My dad's sudden knock on my head brought me back to reality.
Ouch, Dad! Am I really your biological daughter? Why do you hit so hard?
Who else should I hit? Were you thinking about that ungrateful guy just now?
To be honest, I felt a bit guilty. No.
Just sit there and watch, okay? I've invited a lot of people today, including many wealthy young men who are much better than that ungrateful guy.
I reluctantly picked at the food beside me and grumbled.
A last-minute party with last-minute invites. How many people will actually come?
Don't underestimate your old man. Just wait and see.
As the saying goes, old ginger is spicier. I had underestimated my dad's connections. Considering his status, it made sense that people would give him face. But wouldn't they find it ridiculous to attend a breakup party?
Daughter, let me tell you, the youngest son of the Xiao family, Alex, is back. He's my ideal son-in-law. You must have a good chat with him later.
Dad, I just broke up, and you're already introducing me to someone new?
You're not getting any younger. It's time to find a suitable partner. Many people have their eyes on Alex. If you don't hurry, I will. If this perfect son-in-law slips away, where will I find another one?
I was speechless.
Did you hear me? You need to act quickly, or else this perfect son-in-law will slip away.
All right, I got it. I'm just about to graduate, and have just gotten rid of a scumbag. I don't want to dive back into the sea of love immediately. I plan to enjoy myself for a couple of years. If I meet Alex later, I'll politely decline being As the young couple walked in, my dad didn't give me a moment to put down my dessert. He hooked my arm and led me to the door.
Here they come, let's go. I'll introduce you.
I hadn't even seen Alex yet, but I noticed a couple entering hand in hand. They clearly weren't planning to ignore me.
Well, isn't this John's ex-girlfriend? What's this? Your old flame brought you here to show you off?
I raised an eyebrow at her. Since they came looking for trouble, I wouldn't hold back. My dad, who had a fiery temper, stopped in front of them, still holding my arm.
John, we broke up less than half a day ago, and now you're...
He frowned deeply, his gaze shifting between me and my dad, his expression one of shock and confusion. It was clear he misunderstood our relationship.
Is this the short, poor guy?
My dad looked at John with contempt. He had investigated John before and never approved of him. After learning that John had initiated the breakup, his opinion worsened.
Uncle, what are you so proud of? This little lover of yours is just someone I discarded.
I was a bit surprised. Had he grown a backbone because he was with Emma now? Everyone around knew what kind of party this was, so when they heard their words, they all turned to look. Soon, a crowd gathered around us, all equally surprised by the scene at the door. My dad's face darkened instantly, but he didn't lose his temper. He just stood there, listening to the absurd conversation between the two.
Look, John, didn't I tell you she was poor? How dare she wear a knockoff to this party?
Blame my poor judgment.
Yes, John, luckily you have me to save you from misery.
I never thought she was such a gold digger. To endure an old man for money.
Before I could retort, the onlookers couldn't hold back any longer.
Oh my, this is too funny.
Do they really not know who's hosting this party?
This guy is clueless. Emma might save you 10 years of hard work, but David can save you a lifetime.
Exactly. David even got him a director position at the main company.
Hearing the crowd's comments, Emma and John's faces changed repeatedly. They clearly didn't believe it. But the people speaking were all from prominent families. Emma, in fact, didn't fit into this circle. She came to this party to broaden her horizons and show John what a good choice she was. It was an opportunity she had begged for. Hearing those words, a trace of panic finally appeared on Emma. Watching the two people standing there in a daze, I felt a secret delight in my heart. I let go of Michael's arm and addressed John.
John, what are you thinking? I admit I was blind to have liked you back then.
As I spoke, I smoothly linked arms with a nearby young man. Before he could react, I gently tilted my head and leaned on his shoulder.
But now I won't be blind again. That's my dad, and this is my boyfriend.
At this moment, Emma looked at the young man beside me and was momentarily stunned. I chuckled inwardly. My dad had invited quite a few people to this party, including some minor celebrities. Among the crowd, I immediately noticed this handsome young man. He was quite striking. I figured he would play along with my act, right? After the party, I should give him some benefits for his help. I could offer him a few leading roles. Just as I thought, the young man cooperated perfectly. When I leaned my head on his shoulder, he even affectionately ruffled my hair. I smiled slightly and looked triumphantly at the two people in front of me.
Hey, Miss Emma, put away that hungry look. This is my boyfriend.
I mercilessly exposed Emma. Emma snapped back to reality and glared at me. Hearing this, John turned to look at Emma, making his already unpleasant expression even worse. I ignored their micro-expressions and continued.
Neither of you can criticize the other's taste. But honestly, you two being together is a public service.
With that, the surrounding crowd burst into laughter. Even my dad laughed louder than anyone else, giving them no face at all.
What are you laughing at? If it's so funny, why don't you laugh yourself to death?
Emma, clearly spoiled and ill-mannered, screamed loudly when she heard my dad laughing. The crowd immediately fell silent. John, sensing the awkward atmosphere, quickly pulled Emma back. The two of them looked around in confusion, not understanding why everyone had suddenly gone quiet. At that moment, a woman in a white dress hurriedly ran up from behind. She quickly pulled Emma behind her and then, with a humble attitude and a face full of apology, looked at my dad.
Mr. Michael, I am so sorry. My niece is young and doesn't understand. She didn't mean to say that.
My dad didn't say much, just snorted and waved his hand. Soon, a few security guards came to escort the three of them out. Emma was dragged out, still shouting and screaming. It seemed this spoiled young lady still hadn't figured out the situation. John, feeling utterly embarrassed, followed them out without waiting for the security guards to pull him. I walked to the window and looked downstairs, just in time to see the woman in white slap Emma. Emma sat on the steps, stunned and scared.
Tisk, TSK, tisk.
My dad was known for holding grudges. I didn't need to say anything. I knew he wouldn't let them off easily.
You seem very happy.
A deep male voice came from behind. I instinctively turned around. The party was in full swing, and I watched as 3 people began to argue. I turned back to James and offered him a smile.
Of course, not only that, but I also feel quite relieved.
A thought struck me, and I pulled out a bank card from my wallet, handing it to him.
This is your payment for helping me act. Thank you so much. You really live up to being an actor. Your acting was superb.
James first showed a hint of surprise in his eyes, then froze for a moment before quickly shaking his head.
Although there's not much money on the card, there's still around 200,000.
He continued to look at me with a complicated expression and shook his head again.
Seriously? You don't want free money?
I widened my eyes in surprise. Seeing my expression, he sighed helplessly.
That's not what I want.
I took back the card, bewildered.
Is your appearance fee so high that you don't even want 200,000?
Well, compared to a leading role, 200,000 is indeed not much.
If there's a leading role you have your eye on, I can help you fight for it.
Before I could finish, he interrupted me again.
No, you're overthinking it. That's not what I meant.
Then what do you want?
Seeing how difficult he was being, I regretted pulling him over earlier, but I hadn't expected him to be such a big deal. The next second, I saw him take out his phone.
I just want to add your contact information.
Seeing his pitiful expression, I could only sigh and quickly opened WeChat to scan his friend code.
Done.
I waved my phone, still looking at him with regret. He nodded and accepted the friend request. Looking at his face, I felt too embarrassed to say anything harsh.
Well, I have something to do over there. Let's talk later.
With that, I quickly found an excuse to leave. When the party ended, I decided it was best to clarify things with him.
Actually, I understand your intentions.
Question mark.
But I'm not that kind of person. I won't support you, but if you really need help, I can introduce you to other ladies.
I bit my lip. Was he not satisfied?
Don't worry. I'll recommend a beautiful lady who is very generous. You know, she was the one who supported that famous actor recently.
Are you seriously misunderstanding something?
Oh no, is he going to be persistent? Thinking of this, my heart skipped a beat, and I quickly blocked him. Although I've seen plenty of people seeking support in this industry, I've never experienced it myself. Even though that guy is indeed handsome, it's better not to get involved in such things. But thinking that he did help me, I couldn't owe him a favor, so I kindly sent his WeChat ID to my best friend. She is a well-known benefactor in the circle. Not only is she wealthy and generous, but she also treats people very well. Moreover, she doesn't have any peculiar habits. Thinking that James would be with her, he shouldn't suffer too much. Seeing this, I finally put my phone down with a sense of relief. After all, I didn't want to owe anyone a favor. But as soon as I got home, I was bombarded with messages from Lisa.
OMG! David, you're amazing! How did you get his WeChat? I couldn't get it before.
Reading this message, I immediately thought of that guy with his stunning, almost otherworldly face. Looks like he's really a big deal.
Met him by chance. So, do you like him?
I do, but he's way out of my league.
I was a bit dumbfounded. Really, who is he exactly, to be such a big shot?
What do you mean? Who is he? What's his background?
He said he knew you'd ask and told you to find out
'Thinking of his persistent nature, I decided to let it go. Better to keep him on the blacklist. We probably won't meet again anyway. I'll find a way to get him some resources in a few days. But unexpectedly, we met the very next day. I rubbed my messy hair, still groggy, and looked at the person sitting on the living room sofa in confusion.
Why did you come down like that? Go tidy yourself up.
I glanced at the man who turned his head and smiled at me, frowning.
What are you doing here? No way. Are people this shameless now? Chasing sponsors all the way to their homes? How did you find out my home address?
Sensing the awkward atmosphere, Michael quickly stood up to ease the tension.
What's wrong with you? This is Alex, your Uncle Ethan's youngest son, who just returned to the country. I wanted you to meet him yesterday.
What?
Alex sat there with a faint smile, then slowly said,
Uncle, we met yesterday.
Oh, really?
Michael looked enlightened, then gave us a knowing look before heading to the kitchen.
Well, you young people must have more to talk about. I'll go make breakfast.
After Michael left, Alex turned to me, his face full of amusement. He patted the seat next to him and asked,
Want to sit and chat for a bit?
Help, he's so natural, while I'm so embarrassed I could dig a hole with my toes.
What's going on?
Alex asked, holding up his phone.
Well, you didn't explain clearly last night, so I thought.
I looked down, not daring to meet Alex's eyes. After all, it was my fault for misunderstanding his identity.
So you thoughtfully recommended a sponsor for me?
Alex said, chuckling as he leaned closer. Seeing his handsome face getting closer, I quickly turned away.
Misunderstanding, misunderstanding.
Alex laughed softly.
Since it's all a misunderstanding, you can take me off the blacklist now, right?
He was so close that I could feel his warm breath on my face when he laughed, making my face heat up and my heart race.
Done.
I quickly nodded and deftly removed him from the blacklist. I looked up at Alex, only to find him staring at me with a complex expression which puzzled me. Ethan placed his hand on the back of the sofa behind me and then, somewhat dejectedly, spoke.
Sister, do you really not recognize me anymore?
The way Ethan called me sister sent shivers down my spine. I rubbed my arms and looked at Ethan with a complicated expression.
What did you call me?
Hearing this, Ethan tilted his head slightly, looking even more dejected.
It seems you really don't remember me.
I frowned slightly, trying hard to search my memory for any trace of Ethan, but to no avail. After all, a man as striking as Ethan is not someone I would easily forget if I had met him before. This not only made Ethan feel down, but also left me quite frustrated. Just as I was about to ask Ethan when exactly we had met, I heard my dad's hearty voice.
Daughter, dear, Ethan, breakfast is ready. See if you like it.
With that, my dad placed the items he was holding onto the dining table. I shot my dad a disgruntled look, knowing full well that he almost called Ethan his son-in-law. My dad caught my look and then unabashedly gave me a disdainful glance.
Look at you, go upstairs and freshen up. The porridge will be ready soon.
I pouted, glanced helplessly at the two who had already started chatting, and went upstairs to wash up. By the time I came back downstairs, the two of them were deep in conversation, and my dad's face was beaming with joy. But as soon as I got close enough to hear what they were talking about, my dad swiftly changed the subject. I stood there, feeling slightly annoyed.
You're down? Go sit there and eat.
I looked closely and, sure enough, all the chairs around the dining table had been moved, leaving only the one next to Ethan. And it was very close to Ethan. I didn't really want to sit there, given all the other space available, but that chair was indeed very close to Ethan. However, thinking it over, if I made a big show of moving the chair away, it would definitely make Ethan feel awkward. After all, I had already been somewhat unfair to him earlier, so now I should be a bit more considerate. After breakfast, my dad made an excuse about having work at the company and hurriedly left. Before leaving, he handed me a card. Before I could get too excited, my dad spoke up.
Ethan just got back to the country and isn't familiar with things here. Take the card and show him around.
I looked impatiently at the old rascal in front of me, about to refuse, when my dad added,
You can keep the remaining money in the card.
Upon hearing this, my attitude did a complete 180.
Sure, Dad. Don't worry, I'll definitely take good care of my little brother and show him around. You go ahead and get busy.
After watching my dad's car drive away, I couldn't help but kiss the bank card in my hand. I couldn't help but be excited. I knew this card had at least $1 million in it. I never thought my dad would go to such lengths for a son-in-law.
So, where does sister plan to take me?
Ethan's slightly enticing voice came from behind, snapping me back to reality. I turned my head quickly and saw him leaning against the doorway, looking at me with a playful expression.
Hey, what's on your mind?
No, I must maintain my composure. After all, I'm older than him. I need to uphold my image. I quickly suppressed my excitement.
Ahem, let your sister go upstairs and change clothes, freshen up a bit, and then I'll take you out.
Women, going out, especially shopping, isn't just about changing clothes. A little makeup and a bit of hairstyling are also necessary. I thought Ethan might get impatient, but when I came downstairs after more than an hour, I found him leisurely watching TV in the living room. Hearing my footsteps, he slowly turned his head, and a fleeting emotion passed through his eyes that I didn't catch.
So soon?
How long did you think I would take?
The internet says it usually takes at least 2 hours.
Dear brother, stop relying on Google so much. It's not good for you.
With that, I headed to the entrance to grab the keys. In the car, I asked Ethan if there was any place he wanted to go, or anything he wanted to do. To my surprise, he said he wanted to watch a movie. When I drove him to the cinema, I found out he had already bought the tickets, and it was for a romance film.
Really? A romance film?
Isn't watching a romance film the way to win someone's heart? Come on, we're running out of time, let's go in.
As we sat down, I was still thinking about telling Ethan afterward that I had no intention of dating, but by the end of the movie, I was crying my eyes out, completely forgetting about it. Ethan handed me tissue after tissue, helplessly.
Sister, I didn't expect you to be such a crybaby.
What do you know, kid?
Yes, but you still look beautiful when you cry, so delicate and touching.
I really didn't know how Ethan could shamelessly say such embarrassing things. Feeling my face heat up, I snatched the tissue from his hand.
I'll do it myself. Don't mess up my makeup.
As the lights in the theater came on, I took the opportunity to wipe my tears with my phone's reflection. Ethan wasn't in a hurry. He just sat beside me, smiling, with a playful curve to his lips.
I told you I don't watch these sappy movies.
Aren't all young couples watching this nowadays?
Suddenly, sharp, cutting words came from the front. I instinctively looked over. The post-credit scene had just finished, and the theater was still sparsely populated. The remaining people all turned to look at the front row in unison.
Oh! Now you dare yell at me? Why were you so obedient before?
Emma, that's enough. Let's talk about this at home.
Ha! Now you're impatient with me? Weren't you worried about your future before?
The tension in the air was palpable, and everyone watched the couple's heated exchange. Hearing that sharp voice, I immediately recognized it as Emma's. At that moment, I couldn't care less about my makeup. I quickly wiped away my tears and looked ahead.
What a coincidence. How unlucky.
I didn't catch the latter part of Ethan's sentence. My eyes were fixed ahead, and I tilted my head slightly towards him. What? What did you just say? I asked softly. Ethan chuckled and ruffled my hair, which made me turn my head and glare at him in annoyance. But eager to watch the drama unfold, I quickly turned my gaze back.
Nothing, just didn't expect such a coincidence.
I nodded hastily, not asking further or thinking too much, focusing instead on what was happening in front of us. John, despite his insecurities, was extremely concerned about his image. So, when he noticed the strange looks from the people around them, he could barely contain his anger. Sure enough, the next second, I saw John's face turn red.
Emma, enough! Have you no shame? Can't you discuss this at home?
Emma, having been spoiled since childhood, couldn't tolerate this. With a loud smack, Emma slapped John hard across the face.
You dare to yell at me now? Why didn't you dare before? What? Are you not worried about your future anymore? Or do you think you can win back David and reclaim your director position?
John hung his head in silence. Emma, now furious, continued.
Look at yourself. Do you think you can compete with his current boyfriend?
Before she could finish her sentence, John swiftly slapped Emma back. I widened my eyes in shock and then saw the two of them entangled in a fight. I turned to look at Ethan in surprise, only to find him seemingly in a good mood. Why'd he look so happy?
Aren't you happy?
I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Of course, I'm enjoying this.
What are you looking at? Afraid you'll go blind?
By now, the front row was in chaos. The people in the theater quickly left, fearing those two might come after them.
You too!
After yelling at the others to leave, Emma looked at us with displeasure. Actually, we weren't leaving because our identities made it awkward. Standing up immediately would surely get us noticed, though we had already been noticed. But why should I feel guilty? I bought a ticket and entered fair and square. Seeing Emma and John stunned there, I stood up decisively. With my arms crossed, I looked down at the two of them from above. Oh, I thought you two were so in love that you'd never fight. John's face turned green, and upon seeing Ethan beside me, his face turned black.
How could you spy on us?
Emma was so angry. The tension in the room was palpable, with everyone on edge.
I wasn't peeking, I swear, she said with a shrug and a smile, spreading her hands. We bought tickets and walked in fair and square.
Emma stood nearby, her fists clenched tightly. It was clear this hot-tempered young lady was struggling to contain her anger.
Ignoring Emma, Alice turned her attention to John. John, she called softly, her tone causing everyone to look their way.
Ethan, standing beside Alice, took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze, subtly warning her not to rekindle old flames.
Gently shaking off Ethan's hand, she looked at John. His eyes lit up as he looked at her, seemingly gaining confidence from her actions.
Alice, he said softly. When Alice didn't respond, he gave a bitter smile and continued, Alice, you might not believe me, but I truly regret it. I thought it would be easy to be apart from you, but I think about you all the time, even in my dreams. I've really thought about it during this time, and I feel more at ease when I'm with you.
Alice felt a wave of discomfort. Anyone who didn't know better would think they had been apart for ages. She suspected his regret was more about her newfound wealth and influence. After John finished speaking, he stood there staring at Alice. Not just him, but the other two were also staring at her intently. At that moment, she felt like Ethan's gaze could burn a hole through her.
John, she sighed softly, seeing you so desperate now. I'm really glad we broke up. If we were still dating, I'd be a laughingstock.
With that, she turned and took Ethan's hand, striding towards the door. Just before leaving the theater, she turned back with a bright smile.
A perfect match, wishing you both a lifetime of happiness.
Their expressions, twisted and ever-changing, would be something she could laugh about for a long time. In the underground parking lot, Alice held Ethan's hand with one hand and leaned against the wall with the other, laughing uncontrollably. Seeing her laugh so hard, Ethan quickly patted her back, worried she might laugh too hard. After a while, Alice finally calmed down and looked up to see Ethan watching her with a concerned expression.
What's wrong? She tilted her head in confusion.
Well. He scratched his nose awkwardly. I just wanted to ask if you still have any feelings for John.
She looked at him with a grimace. What are you thinking? Do you think I'm that foolish? I must have been blind before. Don't worry, I won't go back to that.
Hearing her words, Ethan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. He interlaced their fingers and held her hand tightly.
So, where's my lovely lady taking me on a date next? He asked with a mischievous smile, looking very pleased.
Alice instinctively tried to shake off his hand, but when she couldn't, she looked at him and saw the expression on his face. Feeling awkward, she quickly turned her head away.
Don't say such things, little brother. What date?
In high spirits, Ethan pulled her along. Two people alone together, isn't that a date?
It was a day filled with plans and unexpected turns. David had meant to take his younger brother, Ethan, out for a casual stroll and some shopping, but things didn't quite go as planned.
Relieved. Ethan, let's just enjoy the day and do some shopping.
Cheerful, sounds good. What's the plan?
Hours passed, and soon it was evening. David had lost track of time. Even though there was a curfew at his house, his father, Michael, hadn't called to remind him. It was almost as if Michael didn't want him to come back at all.
Serious. I can't believe Dad didn't call to remind me about the curfew.
Cheerful, well, it's not too late yet. Let's keep having fun.
David, wanting to prove himself as a mature older brother, decided to take Ethan to the largest bar in the city.
Excited. You know what, Ethan? Let's go to the biggest bar in town.
Surprised, are you sure? Isn't that a bit too much?
Confident. Trust me, it'll be fun.
At the bar, David booked a booth and ordered the most expensive drinks. He drank until he was quite tipsy.
Tipsy. Ethan, you have to try this drink. It's amazing.
Concerned, David, maybe you should slow down a bit.
The events after that became a bit hazy for David. He remembered getting drunk and rushing onto the stage. Ethan hurriedly followed him to try and pull him back.
Shouting, "Let's go on stage, Ethan."
Terrified, David, stop. Come back down.
Amid the cheers of the crowd, David felt something soft and warm on his lips. He could barely recall the details, but remembered Ethan holding him.
Groaning, ugh, my head. What happened last night?
They stayed on stage for quite a while. When they finally got down, Ethan saw how drunk David was and decided to take him home, giving away the expensive drinks to others.
Groggy, what a waste. I shouldn't have ordered those drinks.
Ethan even booked 2 rooms at a nearby hotel, but David insisted on going home.
Concerned, David, let's stay at the hotel. You need rest.
Stubborn. No, I want to go home.
Ethan seemed pleased with David's insistence on going home, even when drunk.
Smiling, even when drunk, you still want to go home. Not bad.
The next morning, David covered his face with his hands as memories of the previous night swirled in his mind.
Xiao? Help me. We kissed last night. What am I going to do?
Just then his phone rang. David glanced at the screen and saw a message from Ethan.
Are you awake?
Just woke up.
Want to go out again this afternoon?
Without thinking, David declined. The thought of meeting now was too awkward.
No, I have something to do at home this afternoon.
Ethan replied quickly.
But your dad said you have nothing planned today. I'm in the living room downstairs at.
The story begins with an unexpected encounter.
Stood at the top of the stairs, staring in disbelief at Ethan in the living room below.
Why are you here?
Then turned his head to look at me, a playful expression on his face.
Uncle saw I was a bit tipsy last night, so he let me stay here.
Eichel emerged from the kitchen, carrying a dish.
Yes, it was quite late, and it wouldn't have been safe for Ethan to go home alone, so I let him stay.
The familiar awkwardness washed over me again. I averted my eyes, thinking of slipping away, but then Ethan looked at Michael.
Uncle, I heard from my sister that you have plans to go out this afternoon?
Eichel placed the dish on the table and turned to me with a stern look.
What? Who said that? We don't have any plans this afternoon. If you two don't have anything to do, you might as well go out and have some fun.
Then immediately responded, trying to sound helpless.
I don't have any plans either. It just depends on whether my sister wants to go out with me this afternoon.
Eichel's sharp gaze was on me.
Do you have plans this afternoon?
No, I don't have any plans. Since the truth was already out, I decided to just go with it. Whatever, it's not like being found out is the end of the world.
After lunch, I tidied up a bit and, under Michael's intense gaze, drove off with Ethan.
As I glanced at Ethan sitting in the passenger seat, I sighed inwardly.
Can we stop by my place so I can change clothes?
Sure, what's your address?
Opened the navigation app as spoke.
Turn right up ahead.
Looked up at him sharply.
Your place is so close to mine. Why didn't you go home to sleep last night?
Then looked at me innocently and shrugged.
I really didn't mean to. Uncle was just too hospitable.
Well, that does sound like something my dad would do. And so, under Michael's supervision, I spent over a month hanging out with Ethan. I have to admit, Ethan is a pretty good guy and quite interesting too. We never had to force a conversation. When I'm with him, I tend to lose track of time, so by the time I realized it, a month had already passed. Just as I was starting to feel a flutter of affection, I quickly packed up and left. Come on, I just climbed out of the pit of love. There's no way I'm falling back in.
Next morning, when Michael called, I was already lying on my best friend's plush bed. Eichel's furious voice came through the phone.
You little rascal, where have you gone? It's early in the morning, and you're nowhere to be found.
Oh, I'm in a bad mood, so I went on a trip. I might be back in 10 days or so.
What?
Seeing that Michael was about to explode, I quickly held the phone away from my ear. But the next second, I heard Michael's voice gradually soften. Then I heard Ethan's voice.
Then sounded quite helpless.
Where are you now?
For some reason, I didn't feel guilty facing Michael's outburst, but hearing Ethan's voice made me feel very guilty. I'm on a trip.
Then bluntly said, calling me out.
Liar.
Hearing Ethan's words, my heart skipped a beat. What's going on? Why do I feel this pressure? Even though we were talking over the phone, it felt as if the person was right beside me. I remained silent, too afraid to speak. At that moment, my bedroom door suddenly burst open with a loud bang. Startled, I turned my head to see Annie walking in with a face mask on.
What time is it? Why are you still in bed?
Annie looked at me disapprovingly and moved forward to pull me up.
Huh? Hurry up, get dressed. I heard there are some really handsome DJs at the new bar. Let's go check them out.
I struggled to sit up and quickly grabbed my phone, only to find the call had already been disconnected. I breathed a sigh of relief, but my heart was still uneasy. Did Ethan hear what Annie said just now?
Why do you look so upset staring at your phone? What's going on? Did some guy steal your heart?
I snapped back to reality, quickly shook my head, and put the phone aside.
No way, what are you talking about? I just got out of a tough relationship. How could I jump back in so soon?
Yeah, even if Ethan heard it, so what? It's better if he gives up on me. Although I felt a bit down, I knew I had to move on completely. As Annie always says, it's better to live happily than to be constantly tormented by love. Annie and I usually woke up around noon. By the time we got ready, had a meal, and leisurely made our way to the bar, it was almost evening. It was actually the perfect time to go to a bar, but when we walked in, we found it completely empty. No patrons, not even the atmosphere crew. Only a bartender was there. We felt incredibly awkward. Annie looked around and then turned to me, whispering,
This is the first time I've felt so out of place in a bar.
What's going on? Why is no one here? Are they not open today?
Wait here, I'll go ask.
Annie patted my shoulder before heading to the bar. I didn't want to go in at first, but from a distance, I saw the surprised look on Annie's face as she talked to the staff. Curious, I walked over.
What's going on?
Annie turned to me with a stiff expression, then glanced past me to something behind me. Her strange reaction made me nervous. I suddenly had a bad feeling and slowly turned around. Sure enough, on the sofa behind me, I saw a very familiar face.
Ethan!
My scalp tingled, and I felt even more guilty, especially when I saw Ethan smiling at me. His smile was so gentle, yet it made me want to run away immediately. My brain screamed at me to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. Seeing this, Annie quickly came over and put her arm around my shoulder.
What a coincidence. Did you book the whole place today?
This is our first meeting, isn't it, Miss Big Spender? But now you can enjoy yourselves as much as you want.
Although Ethan was speaking to Annie, his eyes were fixed on me. When he said, Miss Big Spender, there was a hint of gritted teeth in his tone. Even Annie gave an awkward smile. After all, a bar is all about the... Annie suddenly took out her phone, her voice light.
Oh right, I almost forgot, I have something to do. You guys have fun.
As she spoke, Annie started to withdraw her hand from my shoulder and turned to leave.
Hey, why don't we go together?
A shadow loomed over us, and I turned my head stiffly to see Ethan already standing up.
Don't be in such a hurry to leave, sis. Didn't you say you wanted to have some fun here?
My heart leapt into my throat. He had heard everything. I felt a chill run down my spine, but before I could react, Annie quickly shook me off.
Ha ha ha, you two have fun. I'm leaving now.
With that, Annie left in a flash. I could only watch helplessly as Annie disappeared from my sight.
Sis, let's go have some fun.
Ethan firmly pulled me to the sofa. I sat there awkwardly, cautiously glancing at Ethan. I swallowed hard. Just a moment ago, Ethan was all smiles, But now that we were seated, it was like he had become a different person. He sat there with a cold expression, not moving an inch. I tentatively tried to pull my hand back, but Ethan immediately tightened his grip. I didn't dare move anymore. Over the past month since I met Ethan, he had always been gentle with me, always smiling. This was the first time I had seen him with such a stern face, and it scared me a little.
Ethan, maybe we should leave?
Leave? Didn't you say you wanted to check out the new DJ here? We haven't even seen them yet.
With that, Ethan raised his other hand and signaled to the bartender. Soon, a few people appeared on the stage. Even though it was just the two of us in the audience, those people didn't seem awkward at all and started DJing. In this situation, I couldn't care less about checking out the handsome DJs. I was so embarrassed that I wanted to curl up into a ball, occasionally glancing back at Ethan. But Ethan's face remained cold and unyielding. Seeing Ethan so angry made me incredibly anxious and inexplicably sad, and my nose started to tingle. Feeling the tears welling up in my eyes, I quickly lowered my head. After a while, I heard Ethan's somewhat panicked voice.
What's wrong?
He let go of my hand and tried to lift my chin. He was very gentle, as if afraid of hurting me, but because of this, I stubbornly refused to lift my head. Realizing that Ethan had let go of my hand, I quickly stood up and walked towards the door. Ethan followed me with large strides.
What's wrong? Are you crying?
I kept my head down and didn't say a word, just walked out of the bar. Ethan followed closely behind, trying to hold my hand, but each time I would shake him off. Suddenly, Ethan grabbed my arm firmly and pulled me into a small alley. Just as I was about to struggle, Ethan enveloped me in a tight hug.
Sis.
He rested his chin on my neck, nuzzling gently, and I heard his helpless sigh.
What am I supposed to do with you?
The cold wind blew through the alley as I sniffled and spoke defiantly. Do whatever you want. Ethan seemed amused by my words and chuckled softly a few times. He placed his hands firmly on my shoulders, leaning in slightly and locking eyes with me. Feeling a bit awkward, I turned my gaze away.
So, can I leave? You wouldn't care, would you?
His words jolted me slightly, but I assumed he meant he was leaving now.
So, you're avoiding me because you find me annoying, right? In that case, I might as well go abroad.
As he spoke, Ethan released my shoulders and turned to leave. Panic surged through me as I saw his figure about to disappear at the end of the alley. I hurriedly grabbed his hand. Ethan paused, sighed softly, and then turned back to face me.
Sis, what are you doing? Didn't you say you find me annoying?
I clung tightly to Ethan's arm, my eyes filled with panic. You just said, "Where are you going?" Ethan turned and gently ruffled my hair.
Sis, you might not remember the chubby kid you met on the school rooftop in middle school. I came back for you.
Memories began to surface in my mind. In middle school, I did save a chubby kid who was in a desperate situation. When I found him, he was already standing on the rooftop. I rushed forward to pull him down, and in the process, we both fell, and I got quite a bump. After giving him a long lecture and some comforting words, I hurried back to class. I stared at Ethan, trying to reconcile his current appearance with the chubby kid from back then.
It's been years, and I've lost weight. Of course, you wouldn't recognize me.
I nodded in a daze and then anxiously asked, "What did you mean by going abroad? Will you come back?" Ethan pulled his hand away and took a few steps back, putting some distance between us.
Sis, if you don't want me, I might as well go back. I've been living abroad for years and am already used to it.
Ethan's words, spoken with a hint of sadness, made my heart ache. I
I didn't mean to push you away.
Then why are you avoiding me? Are you tired of me? Annoyed by me? Instead of staying here and bothering you, I might as well leave.
No, no, no. It's not that. I'm just afraid I can't control myself.
What do you mean?
Ethan seemed taken aback and then quickly turned, cupping my face in his hands.
What do you mean by that? Explain yourself.
I tried to deny it, but Ethan suddenly scooped me up, startled by his action. I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck. By the time I realized what was happening, Ethan had carried me into the back seat of a car, holding me tightly in his arms. The confined space of the back seat and Ethan's embrace created an intimate atmosphere. I pushed against his chest, trying to get up. In the next second, Ethan pulled me back directly. I fell into his arms, his grip tight around my waist. He held my chin firmly, forcing me to look at him.
Sis, you'd better behave and finish what you were saying. Otherwise, I might not be in a good mood, and there could be consequences.
His thumb brushed against my lips, pressing slightly. My face heated up, and the atmosphere grew more charged.
I was just anxious, so
Ethan, familiar with my excuses, raised an eyebrow mockingly. He moved closer, and I felt a gentle touch on my lips. I could hear the clear sound of his heartbeat from his chest. Ethan quickly released me, looking at me with a teasing smile.
Can I take it that you wanted to be disciplined on purpose?
No, 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 it's not like that.
Then why don't you speak up?
Ethan continued to brush my lips, his gaze fixed intently on them. The car was dark, with only the faint light from the street lamps outside. Under Ethan's persuasion, I finally confessed my thoughts. Ethan then drove me home. Who knows how thrilled Michael was when he saw me being dropped off by a smiling Ethan, my face still flushed. After Ethan found out that I was afraid of falling for him, he still came to my house every day, almost as if he wanted to move in. I also realized that Ethan was very skilled in his ways. By the time I noticed, almost everyone around us thought we were already together. Annie even said,
I knew Ethan would win you over sooner or later.
Why do you think that?
Because he's had you wrapped around his finger for a long time, you just didn't realize it.
I was speechless. One day, Ethan suddenly appeared at the door, startling me into hanging up the phone quickly.
Sis went out shopping. Who are you calling?
No one, no one.
Ethan looked at my phone suspiciously, but didn't say anything.
Sis, Uncle said there's a big gathering today, and he wants to take both of us.
I didn't mind and agreed to go, but when I arrived with Michael and Ethan, I realized it was a meeting of families. There weren't many people at the gathering, just Ethan's family and Michael. Watching the parents chat happily, I could only sit there quietly. Under the table, I kicked Ethan hard.
Why didn't you tell me we were meeting your parents? If I had known.
If you had known, what? Whom?
I didn't respond, just blushed. If I had known, I would have dressed up better. I wondered what his parents thought of me. Wait! I suddenly snapped back to reality. Why was I even thinking about this? This isn't even official yet. I turned my head and saw Ethan looking at me with a teasing smile.
Don't worry, sis. My parents really like you.
I kicked him again in embarrassment, but felt relieved inside. Although Ethan and I hadn't explicitly defined our relationship, I had already accepted him. After all, during the time we spent together, I had come to understand his feelings. Especially compared to my previous relationship, it was like night and day. I thought, People always say there's a rainbow after the storm. Perhaps Ethan is my rainbow, the one that has been waiting for me all along.